Hello everyone, it's Mike at Inspiring Harmony with another lesson about leading with grace. This is one of those lessons that's taken me a while to learn. I've always relied a little too much on the affirmation and praise of others for my own validation, and so it's taken me a while to learn to relax, do what I do as best I can, leave it to others to decide if what I do has value or is any good, rather than trying too hard to show it or prove it. You may recall, if you saw my first video, that I began piano lessons at the age of 6 with a church organist. Well, that church was First Christian Church of McLeansboro, Illinois, and the organist's name was Eula Malone. Mrs. Malone, as she liked to be called, was a prim and proper lady, but she was wonderful to me and very supportive, helped me get a really good start as a musician. So after a few months of piano lessons with her, she decided it was time for a little performance. Smart thing on her part, to give me a place to perform because she knew how much that would encourage me. So what she did was arrange a simple song that we could play together for church. It involved her teaching me tonic and dominant chords, which are the two most fundamental chords in common practice music. They go like this: the tonic chord and the dominant chord, tonic and dominant. You've heard it 100 times. It's the two chords that are used toward the end of many classical symphonies to give them that sense of finality. So it sounds like this. So, with those two chords in mind, she said, I'm going to teach you, Mike, how to play these two chords, and I'll play the melody above you, and together we'll create this piece. So she gave me a simple pa accompaniment like this. Just that. What was very sweet is that she sat on the piano bench next to me to play the melody, and she would lean over and whisper in my ear when it was time to change chords. So she counted us in, the song started, and then she would say, change, change. Well, we got through the entire song, the whole church applauded, and I thought, man, I really do like this. So that was kind of how I got started playing for things and really enjoying the whole business of performance. Well, 10, 12 years later, when I had just begun college study, I came back to the church in McLeansboro and was invited to play something for the church service. So Mrs. Malone was there, and I thought, oh man, do I want to impress her now. So I decided what I would do is take a familiar gospel tune and I would improvise on it with as much flourish and bombast as I could possibly bring to it. So I sat down at the piano to play something like this. I'm telling you, it would make Liberace blush. So when I finished the entire thing, I was so proud of myself. We got to the end of the service. I couldn't wait to talk to Mrs. Malone to see just how wonderful she thought I was. And so when I saw her afterward, I was brimming, and she looked at me with a smile and said something like, oh, yes, that was very nice. And then she said, just remember, Michael, there's a time for playing loudly, and there's a time for playing softly. And then she just turned and walked away. Well, anyway, I could see she was a little proud of how far I'd come, but I was also a bit deflated and put in my place a bit because of the way she said that, but it was just one of those times I had to learn the lesson. Don't try too hard to show people how good you are. They'll figure it out on their own. I learned the lesson a few years later. In fact, it was hammered home a bit less delicately when I was at Southern Illinois University in Carbondale. I was singing with the University Men's Glee Club with its conductor, Robert Kingsbury, who was my first conducting teacher, actually. So we were invited to sing for a dinner. and the keynote speaker for the dinner was Hubert Humphrey. So as we waited backstage to go on and give a performance, the person who was coordinating the event came backstage to Mr. Kingsbury, who we call Mr. K, by the way, and said, "We're ready for the national anthem." So Mr. K said, "Okay, well, go ahead." And she said, No, we were expecting you to lead the national anthem." And he said, "No one ever told me this." And so he said, "Do you have some kind of accompaniment? Is there a band or a recording or anything?" And she said, "No, we thought you were providing that." So we were stuck. So he thought, well, we could probably just all get up and sing it. But he looked to our accompanist and said, "Can you play the national anthem?" And this accompanist immediately said, "No, not a chance. Without any music, there's no way I can do this." So he looked at me with his Mississippi drawl, because he was from Mississippi and had a deep bass voice, and he said, "Michael, son, do you think you could play our national anthem?" And so in my cockiest tone, I said to him, "What key would you like it in?" And he shot back at me, "Just play it in B flat like everybody else and don't be a smartass." So I was certainly put in my place. So, I went up and played the national anthem in B flat. Everybody sang along. It all worked out okay. The funny part, to end the story, is that there was a minister who was going to give an invocation. That was back in the day when they did that at these public universities. And as the minister began to pray, Mr. K forgot that his microphone was still on. And so he turned to me and whispered, but into the microphone so everyone could hear it, "Damn good job, Michael, son." From 1984 to 89, I taught in the music department at the University of Chicago. Very intense atmosphere where the students and faculty alike were always in competition with each other for who had the most notoriety nationally and internationally in their respective fields. So it was quite a pressure-filled situation. What I remember about that as well, though, is the chair of the department for a few of those years, Howard Brown, who was such an unassuming person, despite the fact that he was a preeminent musicologist specializing in music of the Renaissance. Howard was just such an easy person to be around. I always felt like I could just step into his office, sit down and have a nice easy chat. He invited me to his home for dinner. It just was a wonderful relationship, and I admired him very much that he had achieved so much in his life and career, and yet was so unassuming about it. Howard passed away in Venice. This is a rather poetic ending to his life, I must say. He was there for Carnival, had gone into a mask shop to purchase a mask, and when he came out of the shop, collapsed on the sidewalk of a heart attack. I'm told that as people gathered around him, he spoke to them in most of their own languages, because he spoke most European languages well enough to lecture in those languages. And having no other options, they said, we need to get him onto a gondola and then to a motorboat on the Grand Canal so we can get him to a hospital as quickly as possible. So people helped him into a gondola, and a gondolier started to take him down one of the smaller canals, and he died in the gondola looking at the city of Venice. What I remember most about Howard is how he never felt the need to prove himself. He loved what he did, he was very good at it, and others did indeed notice. I think it's so unfortunate that we define ourselves more by what we do than by who we are, and I think it's misguided to measure our worth primarily by the opinions of others rather than simply being true and authentic with ourselves. What I learned from Howard's example is that many who desire positions of leadership do so to be the center of attention. But here's my advice. If what you seek is the limelight, perhaps it's best to let the limelight find you. Because if you are good at what you do, others will indeed notice. Thank you for joining me for this lesson about leading with grace. I hope you'll click on the links to my website, my blog, and my Twitter feed. And until the next time, buen camino.